Alright, so here we go. Well, let's find the area of this thing. Any thoughts? Any ideas? Well, what shapes do we have?
A triangle and a semicircle.
We have a triangle and a semicircle.
You have two sides of the triangle.
Which one might be easier? I don't know.
You have two sides of the triangle.
We have two sides of the triangle.
Yeah. Three sides, actually. Three now.
Well, now we have all three sides of the triangle?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, now we can do what we did on the quiz today.
Well, you can, but also look at your notes from I think it was yesterday or Sunday. I can't remember what day.
Oh, like the semi.
But we have Hero's formula. If you know all three sides of your triangle, if you have a 14, and a 10, then can't you find the area using Hero's formula?
Yeah.
Now remember, Hero's formula is the one that uses the semi-perimeter.
It's like S times.
So what is the perimeter? Do the perimeter first. 38. What's the perimeter of the triangle? 38. Which means the semi-perimeter is 19. So Hero's formula says we start with 19, the semi-perimeter. And then what do?
And then we take like this side minus.
We subtract
like
each side from that.
Yeah.
So 19 minus 14. 19 minus 14. And 19 minus 10. So Hero's formula says you take the semi-perimeter, which is half the perimeter, and then you multiply that number times that number minus each side. So this is 19 minus 14, and this is 19 minus 10. All right, so multiply those all up and take the square root. What is it?
65.38.
65.38. Anybody agree with that?
Yes.
Now, what about the semicircle? How are we going to find the area of the semicircle? 1/2 pi r squared. Very good. Because pi r squared is the area of a circle. We want half of it. So r, what's r? 5. So this is going to be 1/2 25 pi. So 25 halves pi. Since I have this as a decimal, let's go ahead and get this as a decimal. What is that as a decimal? 25 halves times pi.
Yeah.
39.27. 39.27.
27?
Correct.
And then, like the problem that we just did, the final answer is these two
Combined.
added together.
Yeah.
Because your job was to find the area of the whole shape. So what is that?
104.6445. Yeah.
104.65?
Yes.
And then units if we have units.
Cylinder.
But we don't, so okay. Alright, did that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Alright, let's finish this last one and then we'll do a couple of review problems before we start volume. What in the world is going on here? Okay, so we're finding the area of that. And we know AB is 6, and BC is 3, and angle A way is 95 degrees, so that's given. This was a triangle. That was a semicircle. What's this? A sector. A sector. What is this? Isn't that another sector? How can we find the area of the shaded? What will be our strategy, our game plan to find the area of the shaded? Think about what we did yesterday. It was a different kind of problem, but could we find the area of this whole big sector? Could we find the area of the littler sector? And then what would happen if we subtracted them? Would we get this? So we're going to take the big sector minus the little sector. That's going to be our game plan. You with me? Now, the big sector means the whole thing. So how do we find the area of the sector? What's our formula for the area of a sector? Look at your notes. Look at your note card. How do we find the area of a sector?
Angle 360 times pi
So
squared.
the angle is 95, so we put 95 over 360. And then what do we multiply that by, Alana?
Pi r squared.
Pi r squared. Now, for the big sector, that is the whole picture, what is r? 9. So we're going to multiply that by 81 pi, 9 squared. All right, so go ahead and figure out what is that. Let's do it exactly first. Does this reduce 95 over 360? Does that reduce? Yeah, by 5. So what is that? 19 over 72. That doesn't reduce anymore. Times 81 pi over 1. I think a 9 will come out of both of these. So the area of the big one is 19 times 9, 171 pi over 8. All right, so I don't want anybody getting lost in that arithmetic. Pay attention. Here we go. So here's our formula: 95 over 360 times 81 pi. So first thing I did was reduce this by 5s. So it became 19 over 72. That's just that fraction reduced by 5s. So then I had to take 19 over 72 times 81 over 1. This and this are both divisible by 9. So then I multiplied straight across and got 19 times 9 pi over 8. That's how I did that. Now I still gotta do the little one. I'm going to use the same formula, but this time, what is my radius for the little sector? This is the sector. Sector is a piece of pie. This is it. It's 6, right? So this is going to be times 36 pi.
Bless you.
Now, that's gonna reduce the same way, so that's gonna reduce to 1972s. And what do you know about 36 and 72? It's 1 and 2, so that goes away and that becomes a 2. So that's 19 pi over 2. Now again, in a minute we're going to type all this in on our calculator and get the approximation. But what if we have to do this exactly? What are we going to do with 171 pi over 8 minus 19 pi over 2? Well, you can't, I mean, we're going to subtract, but we can't just subtract. We have to do something first. How do we subtract fractions? Common denominator. So one of them's over 8 and one of them's over 2. So I gotta multiply this one by 4. Uh, 19 times 4. And now I can subtract. 171 minus 76. Is that 95 pi over 8? I think that's a total coincidence, but I'm really not sure. Wow, blows your mind, doesn't it? Okay, quickly, let's go back to our original work, which was right here and right here. Type this in on your calculator, get a decimal for me. 95 divided by 360 times 81 pi. Get a decimal for that. 95 divided by 360 times 81 pi.
67.15.
What is it? 67.05? 15. Okay. Do the same thing here. 95 over 360 times 36 pi. Okay, then go ahead and subtract those, Maddie. $37.31. Okay. Now, just for fun, type in 95 pi over 8.
37.31.
Wow, that's a massive problem. So, we gotta let that digest a little bit, and let's do a little bit of review. Anybody have a question about anything there before I erase it? Alana, is your hand up?
No.
Okay. Well, actually, your hand was up, but not for that reason. Okay. All right, let's try a triangle. Now, nobody is sitting there staring blankly into space. Nobody is not typing this in on the calculator. The quiz we took that some of you finished in like 4 or 5 minutes, perfect. Those of you that are struggling, you know, if this is taking you more than 4 or 5 minutes, you don't know what you're doing, so you need to pay attention. And let's work through this and get it right. So let's say we know this is 15, and this is 18, and this is 12. And your job is to solve that triangle. Okay? Which basically means I know all the sides already, so I got to find all of the angles. Does it matter which angle you find first? No. So because we're all doing it together, we're just going to pick one, and then we're all going to do it together. So what angle do we want to do? A, because we're A's. So A, we're going to find that angle. Right here. This is the one we're finding. Now, can I do the law of sines?
No.
No, because what do I not have?
Angle.
I don't have a set, right? So this is going to have to be law of cosines. Did you bring a pass, sweetie?
No, I was taking my IOC.
Okay. He didn't give you a pass?
No.
So we are going to have to use the law of cosines. And if we decide that we are using angle A, then it is going to be out here in my big long law of cosines equation. Right? And that means that over here will be the side that goes with angle A, which is 18. And then everything in the middle is a combination of 15 and 12. So 15 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 15 times 12 times cosine A. All right, so now we start typing, and you're on your own at this point. If I'm typing it in, I'm going to do this. Oh, I always forget. Is that 324?
Yeah.
And 225 and 144 and 360 cosine A. So I'm just going to take care of all that arithmetic. So I squared, and then times all that together. Now, again, if I'm doing it, I'm going to add these two together. So I get 369 minus 360 cosine A. And now, if you're doing it wrong, you subtract these two numbers. That is wrong. You cannot subtract these two numbers. That has a cosine. Instead, you gotta subtract over here. You gotta bring the 369 over here. So I hope you're keeping an eye on my arithmetic because I'm doing this by hand. And then what can I do?
Second cosine.
I can't second cosine yet.
Divide.
I have to divide first. So I have 45 over 360. Negatives cancel. And that is what I will second cosine. What do you get? 82.81. Do I have confirmation from somebody?
Yes.
So everybody gets to this point and second cosines. How do we know we have to second cosine?
A is in the back.
Because the A is in the back of the cosine. All right. Now what? You're not done. Now what do we have to do?
And now law of sine.
Now I can do the law of sines because now I have the pair that I didn't have before. So sine 82.81 over 18, that's my match set now that I have. Now I get to pick again. You want to do B or C? C? So if you decide here to use C, does it matter?
No.
No. So we're just going to do C. So we'll say sine C over 15. So if you're doing C, you got to be using 15. Then we'll cross multiply again. and divide by 18. This fraction right here is sine C. So we second sign this fraction. So do that for me. Second sign this fraction. 55.76? 77? And then what about angle B?
Just add them all together. and
Add them up and subtract from 180, and what do we get up there?
55.
41.42?
Piano.
Alright, so that's a little catch-up review there. Using the law of sines and